Ethl, my love, you are really breathtaking. Stunning, my darling. What on earth is going on here, Ethl? Those years on I Love Lucy were in retrospect the most financially draining of my career. Many people thought that Vivian Vance had agreed to put on weight so that Lucy would appear slimmer, and this belief persisted for a long time. But it was all false. Lucy concocted it during a social gathering. For some reason, everyone believed it for a long time. What transpired behind the scenes was actually considerably more sinister. Ways in which Viven endured no one was aware of. Despite her dark eyes, she arrived at work. She was so enraged by her co-star that she toasted his death with champagne. For many years, they worked to conceal these facts from the public. Everything she had wished the world to know was now revealed, will soon be released. Cherryhill, Kansas was the site of Vivian Ribera Jones's birth on July 26, 1909. There weren't any songs or stories when she was a kid, a mother who thought acting was shameful and rigid. Methodist standards governed the household. Performing, her mother cautioned her, might damn her to eternal damnation. Even though she was the second of 6 children, Vivian always felt distinct from her relatives. There was a rift between her mother's values and her innate fondness for hosting parties. The moment her spark was revealed, it was promptly extinguished. Acting was more than simply something her mother despised. In her mind, it was evil. As a result, there was an internal struggle in the house, and Vivian's soul was unable to stop attempting to rise to the top. Eventually, she internalized that stress, and she carried it with her for a long time. The family uprooted and relocated to Kansas, Independence. There, her passion ignited. Nighttime sneaking out became her new normal, not for enjoyment but for independence. She desired to take the stage. No matter what her mother said, she always aspired to be a singer, dancer, and performer. Was mistaken. A supportive friend she made at school encouraged her to follow her passions. Anna Engelman, a theatrical teacher, allowed her to flourish. During her school years, Viven befriended a youngster named William Ng, who would go on to become a famous cheerleader and beauty queen, turn into a well-known playwright. However, at home, everything remained unchanged. Unfortunately, her loved ones persisted in trying to dampen her resolve. Her mother became increasingly resistant the more she performed. Her friends began referring to her as Viv. Maybe it was because it sounded less tethered to her escaping life, freer and lighter. The turning point arrived at that particular second. There was a change in her surname. Becoming Vivian Vance was her choice. She no longer identified as Jones. Choosing herself, Vance is named after the folklorist Vance Randolph. Maybe she recognized parts of herself in those tales. Without fear of judgment or constraint, unbridled. She abandoned her family in Kansas and headed to Tulsa to pursue theater acting. Moving on wasn't her only goal away. A cord was being severed by her. She had grown apart from her mother's family. At this point, she belonged on her own. At the tender age of 21, she made her stage debut in 1930 at the Albuquerque Little Theater, a modest venue. Those 2 roles, a sexy woman and a compassionate nun, were both played by her on stage, portions of her life to some extent. People began referring to the venue as the Vivian Vance Playhouse after her impactful performances. She was embraced by the community when they recognized her skill. For the express purpose of sending her to New York to attend acting school, they even put on a fundraiser performance. After singing My Man in a brief review, she shot to fame in her hometown. All the things that had been advised against ended up being the ones that offered her hope for the future. Boarding a train to New York, she carried a suitcase full of dreams and $50. Her job as a waitress required her to during the day and then tried out for the role by night. Nobody would ever accept you. She persisted even when she went without food on several occasions in order to save subway fare. Ultimately, she was cast as a chorus member in the 2-year Broadway musical Music in the Air in 1932. Now was her chance. People started to take note of her movements, her delivery of lines, and most of all her hilariousness, little by little. The chorus girl was becoming into something more as time went on. a last-minute request to fill in for an absent colleague in a she performed in more than 200 performances of a play titled Howe for What. In 1941, she landed her largest stage role co-starring with Eve Arden and Danny Kaye in the smash musical Let's Face It. With 547 performances under her belt, Viven had finally achieved her goal. The discomfort, however, remained even after success. Despite the pain, she persisted in moving forward. After that, she became a regular cast member on another show called Over 21, which transported her to Africa during WOV. Despite her fame, her private life was in shambles. With the hope that she could finally break out of her strict household, she wed Joseph Danick Jr. when she was 19 years old. Not at all. After 3 years he departed from the town, leaving her behind once more. Eventually, in 1941, she tied the knot with actor Philip Ober. Even though it lasted longer, that marriage was the most agonizing of all. Ober was unhappy that his wife was doing better in life than he was. It escalated to violence. She lost to him. His actions caused her to feel insignificant. She was singled out for criticism by her future co-star Lucille Ball. However, the harm was extensive. Despite her internal turmoil, Viven continued performing. Vivian had a nervous breakdown in 1945 while touring with her play The Voice of the Turtle. When asked to describe the experience, she said, "Let's face it, I cracked up." She felt as like she was going crazy. It all came tumbling down, the burden of her youth, the stress of her celebrity, and the anguish of her marriage. She entered treatment and remained a patient for many years. As she proceeds, she repaired her broken self-esteem. Because of that, she transformed. No longer did she visit mental hospitals in her celebrity role, now she did it as a person who understood the suffering. Repairing people was not her goal, they weren't alone, she just assured them. It was as if she were possessed. It remains, let's be honest, her greatest stage triumph. There were 1,000 opportunities squandered, though, behind the cheers. She relocated to California to pursue a career in film, following a 1947 reprise of The Cradle Will Rock. The plan backfired. She was in only 2 films, The Blue Veil 1951 and The Secret Fury 1950. She was approached by a producer about a glamorous striptease routine for a musical. Opting out, she declined. As a result of that part, Mary Martin became famous. A choreographer wanted her fired from her role as Revenge in Carousel, which led to her losing the role as well. The obstacles multiplied. She persisted nonetheless. A significant event occurred in the field of television in 1951. The role of Ethl in I Love Lucy was cast by Vivian Vance, a 42-year-old lady. She was said to have signed an eerie contract requiring her to put on weight, specifically 15 pounds, so that Lucille Ball would appear more stunning in comparison, a belief that persisted for decades. The deal, however, was never real, that was merely a jest. For fun, Lucille made it up at a party and wrote some ridiculous rules, like gaining 5 pounds per week and never being funnier than her. However, many believed it, and the falsehood persisted for a long time. Truthfully, Vivian's weight fluctuated as time went on. Over and over again, she made diet plans. There was never an actual agreement, even though Lucy may have wished she looked better next to her. It didn't stop that urban legend from becoming a Hollywood classic. Prior to I Love Lucy, Viven was not a little-known actress. Since the late 1920s, she had performed on Broadway. On 2 occasions, she even filled in for the legendary Ethyl Merman in Cole Porter musicals. She began starring in her own films in the early 1940s. She was on stage in La Jolla, California, in 1951. California, when producer Jess Onheimer and Desi Arnaz witnessed her perform. She was hired immediately. Lucy, on the other hand, was not pleased to hear the news. "I can't believe you're trying to play Ethyl when you're my age," she told Viven. "You appear too lovely with your matching hair color." The crew resorted to making Vivian wear skin-tight clothing, and applying heavy makeup to hide her beauty flaws. In order for Lucy to take center stage, they desired that she appear older and less beautiful. William Froehlich played her on-screen husband, but Vivian had no idea who he was when they first met. She looked over to DeCessi and questioned, "Who's that old man over there?" She later chuckled when she heard he was portraying her husband and compared him to her grandpa. Froehlich never forgave her after hearing that. From the start, he had a strong disdain for her. Their animosity persisted and even became a plot point in the program. It wasn't only Froehlich with whom she clashed, though. On occasion, Lucy and Viven clashed as well. Lucy yelled at Vivian for being tardy while she was pregnant. In response, Viven said something so cutting that Lucy couldn't help but chuckle. They hit it off as comedic companions after that. They may have fought in real life, but their on-screen antagonism was real magic. History was made by Viven in February 1954. The first woman to ever receive an Emmy was she for Excellent Supporting Role. The Emmy she received in 1953 for her portrayal of Ethl established a whole new category. It demonstrated the significance of supporting characters. Additional nominations came Viven's way in 1954, 1956, and 1957. She still felt trapped, though, despite the accolade and the celebrity. Even though she was now known solely as Ethl, the plain landlady, she had once been a beautiful Broadway star. She was both ensnared in a part she thought would go on forever, and created a legend thanks to the Emmy. Also, disputes arose over finances. Her weekly salary increased from $280 in Season 1, the same as Froehlich's, to $7,500 in Season 6. It wasn't Omen. It was because her agent was very powerful and consistently requested higher compensation. Women seldom asked for extra money in those days, but Viven refused to compromise. Even more was requested of her when she became a member of The Lucy Show in 1962. More control over the process, nicer attire, and her name prominently displayed were her desires. She was confident in her value and didn't mind demonstrating it. The year 1952 was the year of one of the most beloved scenes from I Love Lucy. Working on a conveyor belt stuffing chocolates was the chocolate factory moment for Lucy and Ethl. As the chocolates accelerated, everyone watched in laughter as they freaked out. On the other hand, it wasn't humorous when you weren't involved. There was a lot of erratic speeding up and malfunctioning from the machine. Every time they took a picture, Vivian had to eat chocolate again. She was visibly ill by the time it was over. What appeared to be an innocent joke actually had a serious consequence. Lucy shot the now iconic Vitamia Tagamin commercial sketch in the same year. It was amusing to watch. A health tonic puts Lucy under the influence, and not acting but slurring her lines. The prop tonic contained 23% alcohol and was authentic. Its true strength was unknown to the crew. Lucy was truly inebriated by the time she swallowed the last spoon. She did. Those scenes made television gold, even though she could hardly stand straight. It demonstrated how vulnerable actors were at times in the early days of television. Although Viven's 1953 Emmy triumph meant the world to her, she was actually hurting on the inside. She thanked Lucy in a moving statement for her. She had friends and family who supported her, but deep down she felt like she was never good enough. She was beautiful, talented, and possessed a voice that could rock an arena. However, nobody saw anyone but Ethl. Even after she won the Emmy at the age of 44, she continued to acquire the same types of roles instead of breaking into new ones. The same accolade that brought her fame also ensnared her. This opportunity for Viven to showcase her singing abilities came in 1954. Her operatic training gave her a voice that could hold its own against Broadway's brightest stars. She was quite vocal about wanting more Ethl-centric episodes, such as Ethel's Birthday, where she got to sing. She had a stunning, graceful, powerful, and expertly trained voice. Every opportunity William Froehlich had, he would make fun of her by claiming she was a terrible singer. Yet viewers thoroughly enjoyed those shows. At last, Viven had her moment in the spotlight. Only a fleeting look prior to her signing with the Ethl label, she truly was a star. Notoriety had become terrifying by 1956. Fans of I Love Lucy started traveling across borders because of the show's meteoric rise to fame. Each week, Viven received thousands of letters. It was delicious, strangers were terrifying. She was followed by some persons in public. Unlike today's celebrities, she wasn't shielded from harm. For the sake of her personal safety, she had to engage security guards. With her prominence came both money and danger. Because of television, she became a part of millions of people's families, and some of them didn't know how to draw the line. Viven and Froley's animosity toward each other intensified. Even before the show debuted on October 15, 1951, she made a joke about how he should portray her dad. A 64-year-old man he was. This woman was 39 years old. Cast as his wife, she felt embarrassed. In retaliation for overhearing her, he referred to her as a sack of dork knobs during dress rehearsal. Froley despised her voice and despised collaborating with Desi Arnaz according to her subsequent writings. Their animosity for one another was obvious. Every room in the studio was packed with it. Things are already looking bleak by 1953. Rowley's drinking became unmanageable. For the most part, he was inebriated while filming and had to restrain himself from his hands to mute the trembling. He would rather stay in his dressing room during bouts and ignore the director's orders. It was too much for Vivian. She wanted private changing rooms. Desi refrained from allowing them to leaving the set completely. After that, they made sure to stay out of each other's way while they weren't on camera. Both stars were offered a spin-off show about Fred and Ethl in 1955 by Desilu Studios. It was a chance for them to get wealthy. Froley was correct, on the road, but Viven declined. She vowed to herself that they would never collaborate again. She expressed her belief to producers that Lucy and Ricky were essential to the show's success. Everyone was taken aback by her refusal. No matter how weak it was, Hollywood hailed their chemistry as gold. Arose from prejudice. Vivian, however, prioritized peace above profit. She hated more than she wanted to be famous. After that, the last chapter arrived. William Froley had a heart attack on Hollywood Boulevard and died on March 3, 1966. Vivian attended a dinner party that evening. Upon hearing the news, she remained composed. Lacking hesitation, she continued, "Champagne for everyone." It wasn't a joke, instead she raised her bottle. There was a party. At his funeral, she stayed home. Flowers were not sent by her. She was completely unkind. The only thing that put an end to their dispute, which began in 1951, was his passing. It was still far from over even after that. Suddenly it ceased. There were continual disagreements between Lucille Ball and Viven since Ball had always been in charge of the set. Their reign as America's favorite comics began in 1951. However, at the moment, they were facing challenges in inspirational area. As if crushed, Viven felt. She made a devastating decision after 3 years. With that, she left. She startled everyone in 1965 when she abruptly departed the show, right when her second television popularity was reaching its peak. What she was giving up went beyond acting, meant giving up a sense of stability, notoriety, and the opportunity to shape her own reality. Prior to all of this, she had been appearing as a guest on the Red Skeleton Hour from 1960 to 1962. She portrayed the witty and scathing Clara Appleby in a February 1962 sketch titled The Iceman Guth. Proven that Lucy wasn't necessary for Viven to find humor. She had an appearance in Appleby's Predictions in 1960 as well. She was able to demonstrate her worth to the industry and herself through these assignments. She was versatile. By herself, she was capable.
Numerous viewers numbering in the millions came to the realization that she now felt like more than simply Ethl from the Mertz flat. Unfortunately, not every chapter was well received. With Woody Allen's Don't Drink the Water, she made an unsuccessful return to Broadway in 1966. She had planned it as her comeback. Rather, it became a public embarrassment. Another actress was brought in to replace her during the early screenings after she was sacked. It didn't help that Woody Allen acknowledged she wasn't a good fit for the role. Peers and critics witnessed the rejection. She was absent for all 598 performances of the play when it premiered in New York on November 17, 1966. It was a devastating setback. She found herself trapped in her former character, Ethl, once again. With each passing moment apart from Lucy, my heart seemed to crack a little more. In exchange for a more secure but less glitzy career, Viven left the theater and sitcoms in the 1970s. She landed the role of Maxine, the bubbly protagonist of Maxwell House coffee ads. She cheerfully distributed coffee in one of the most iconic adverts from the 70s, "Could be the best instant of your day." The ads were comfortable and familiar, and she performed a good job with them, but she understood they meant something. She had had enough of pursuing dramatic parts. The first ever Emmy for supporting actress was bestowed upon her in that year, 1953. Her current focus was on maintaining her visibility. They appeared to be ensnared in the same predicament as they co-starred with Margaret Hamilton, who was famous for her role as the Wicked Witch. Adored for a single part, disregarded for the rest. Something Lovely occurred in 1977. Lucy Calls the President was a one-off CBS show that Lucille Ball asked her to appear in. Once more, Vivian donned the role of the nosy neighbor. Many viewers saw it as little more than a pleasant get-together. Few, however, were aware that Viven had a stroke while filming. She did sought to conceal it. Moreover, she retained her past Viv appearance on screen. Endearing, humorous and perceptive, yet the reality was brutal. She was unwell. Her second-to-last appearance would be that special. She ended her career with a brief appearance in a series named Sam and Mark Harmon. She was secretly battling something much more serious than poor ratings. She had endured years of coping with her breast cancer diagnosis. Not everything in Vivian's life was about stardom and humor. Most people don't understand, but it was about grief, resilience and heartbreak. Never laid eyes on. She had a terrible experience with her first marriage in 1933. Just 2 years after their marriage ended, she was forced to seek refuge in a women's shelter due to Joseph Danick's extreme jealousy. For decades she hid this secret, yet in the end, it determined everything. In time her phobia of men grew. Her unease intensified, and lamentably, the cycle continued. Even more anguish came with her second marriage, Philip Ober. He struck her so severely that she returned to work in 1954, sporting a black eye, all while filming I Love Lucy. Makeup was unable to bury it. Upon seeing it, Lucille Ball's fury sprang forth. Despite her assurances that she would file for a divorce on her behalf if she didn't, the pain remained. Ober's jealousy escalated into violence as he watched her career soar while his own was falling. Desieras may have given him modest roles on the show to diffuse the situation, but it made him even more furious. Caught between terror and weariness, Viven felt trapped. As time went on, the mental toll of this suffering increased. In 1945, while touring with a stage production, she suffered her initial nervous breakdown. Later on in life, she was identified with a condition known as anxiety neurosis, which has its origins in her troubled upbringing and unhealthy relationships. Specifics are lacking, however there is some talk of a second breakdown in 1974 that may have necessitated electroshock treatment. Her struggle with mental illness was evident throughout her entire life. Existence prior to its open discussion. While discussing mental health was socially unacceptable, she subtly raised awareness for those going through tough times. However, her infertility was her greatest source of pain, a subject she avoided discussing. Her untimely demise began, and once she wed Ober, everything fell flat. She was more devastated with each failed attempt. It became more challenging when I observed Lucille Ball tend to her own children, Lucy and DeCessie Jr. Their love was like her own to Viven. She made an effort to alleviate that void. She took it upon herself to guide up-and-coming actresses, providing them with the nurturing she lacked while she was a parent. She felt like a failure on the inside, though. In 1973, she started her battle with breast cancer. As the cancer progressed, she had a mastectomy, chemotherapy, and other procedures. To her very core, she kept her suffering hidden from view. She put on a happy front, worked and joked on the outside. But she was in excruciating pain when no one was looking. Regardless, she persisted. Not even her closest friends could have predicted the severity of her illness until it was already too late. Compassion was never her goal. Living a dignified life was all she yearned for. Her expressionless anguish extended even to her viewing of I Love Lucy. She said she was coerced into staying in an interview from 1977. She ate more than she intended in an effort to make Lucy appear slimmer. In order to maintain the image of the clumsy housewife, she was compelled to wear unflattering clothing and apply terrible makeup. She despised it. She possessed an air of refined sophistication when she wasn't on film, but the show stifled that. The strain had a toll on her. In order to complete filming, she required therapy. Even further back in time, in the 1930s, when she experienced paralysis of a portion of her face, she was incorrectly diagnosed with Bell's palsy. That, however, would be linked to the trauma she had as a youngster. Years later, the body's response to mental anguish as well as physical disease. She started to worry excessively about her appearance and the opinions of others, particularly in relation to her face. She was always plagued by that insecurity. She received millions of dollars to reprise her role as Ethl in a spin-off series following the cancellation of I Love Lucy. She wasn't prepared, but William Froley was. She despised him. They had a poisonous relationship from the start. She made a remark about the fact that he was 22 years older than her and he never forgave her because he was an alcoholic. She rejected every offer, including a spin-off, from CBS. There is no magic number of being in his presence once more was priceless. During her last days, a few weeks before to her passing, her guest was Lucille Ball. As Vivian enjoyed her afternoon at a Belvedere residence, Paige Peterson, a young woman who lived in the neighborhood, kept an eye on them. They chortled, wailing ensued. She broke down in tears as Lucy departed. Her silence was deafening. She simply left, devastated. Later in life, Lucy's daughter Lucy Arnaz revealed that her mother wept for months over the loss of Viven. They had battled indeed, but ultimately their bond went beyond mere stardom. They were comic soulmates. In a series of letters dictated by Vivian Vance, before her death on August 17, 1979, the actress revealed the industry's treatment of her during her career. The producers tried to dissuade her from directing since they thought it wasn't ladylike. They repeatedly obstructed her path. The letters were more than just a way to say goodbye. She had fought these walls her whole life, and these were her last cries.